Writing Matters with Dr. Troy Hicks is a Writable podcast. Find more episodes and subscribe on your favorite platforms. And if you want to learn how to grow great writers, check out Writable.com.
In this episode of Writing Matters, we speak with Stephen Anderson. Stephen is a leader in the convergence of digital learning and leadership, a former teacher and instructional technology director, and a blogger and Twitter user at Web 2.0 or Web 20, which is something we learn a little bit more about through the conversation. Let's hear more about the ways that Stephen approaches educational technology, professional development, and his work as a writer. Welcome to Writing Matters. Today, we're speaking with Stephen Anderson, who is a former teacher and director of instructional technology and now does independent consulting work through Web 2.0 Classroom. He's regularly traveling and consulting with a variety of school partners, and we're excited for the conversation today. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And so you have had quite an interesting journey on your path as an educator. I'm wondering if you could tell us just a little bit about what has brought you to the point you're at today as an educator and the kind of work you do.
Yeah, definitely. So I was a middle school math and science teacher for 13 years. I went back to school after that time to get my master's in instructional technology because I had a passion for how my students were using technology and realized that there were a lot of teachers who needed help with that. So I went back and did that and eventually rose through the different departments in my district to become director of instructional technology. And that led me to being able to present and having the opportunity to work with other districts in my area and going out and working with other districts around the country. And eventually it became to the point where I could go out and I could do that full time. And so now that's what I have the opportunity to do, is work with districts all over the country, all over the world, and on everything from leadership to technology to true transformation and everything in between. And it's a joy to be able to work with educators every day.
And I have to imagine that there is no regular every day for you. Something is different every day. But if we did look at a snapshot of your life across a week or a month, what might that look like in terms of the time you spend in schools and at conferences and through other outreach that you do with educators?
Yeah, you're exactly right. There is no typical day or a typical week, but there will be days where I'm directly working with school districts. So going in and depending on, the reason that I'm there, and talking to administrators, doing observations, doing walkthroughs, talking to them about anything from how they're implementing transformation and how they're working towards the future to providing professional development for teachers. I could be at a conference. I was just at a conference a couple days ago, just talking about the effective use of technology and how school leaders and teachers can better serve students through the use of technology. I might be spending time working on another book that I'm writing. So I always try to dedicate time to that. And then a lot of that time is spent on airplanes going from one place to another. So the great thing about the work that I get to do is that I get to work with teachers and I get to work with educators, and the vast majority of them that I am come across are very passionate about what they do and passionate about helping kids. And that always makes my work so much easier.
Well, that's fantastic. And we might also find you on Twitter, because as the founder of the EdChat hashtag, my guess is that you're still pretty active there, among other places. Tell us a little bit about the role that Twitter plays in your professional life, maybe a little bit about the founding of the EdChat hashtag and how that community has grown over the years, and what advice you might have for teachers as they're trying to build their own professional learning network.
Yeah, Twitter has definitely played a huge impact on who I am as an educator from the very beginning. I've had my Web 20 Classroom account for nearly 12 years, and it all started out, I was working in a school district that was very rural in North Carolina, and in order for me to best serve those teachers, I created a blog and a Twitter account that they could follow, was very easy for me to post resources or links to different things, and they could follow those things. And I began to stretch beyond the boundaries of my district and following other people who were providing information to me and helping me learn and grow and stretch my thinking. And that's how my account began to grow. And I had some opportunities. One of the first things that I ever had published was an article in School Library Journal about how the media coordinators in my district were using Twitter to connect to each other. And so that is what launched a lot of what I do on Twitter. And I ran across a gentleman named Tom Whitby, and Tom he's a retired English teacher from New York. And I like to say that Tom is an instigator, and he likes to ask the questions that really get people thinking. And so he and I had some conversation back and forth. And one day he had asked some questions on Twitter, and he messaged me and said, "Hey, have you got some time to help me answer some of these questions and jump in this conversation?" I said, "Sure, that would be great." And so we did. And afterwards, Tom and I talked and said, "Wouldn't it be great if we had a regular time where we could do this? Something that, we could schedule out, and we could say, hey, at this day and at this time, we're going to talk about this thing." And at that time, which has been almost 11 years to almost 12 years, the hashtag was becoming was a new idea, but was becoming a little more used on Twitter. And so we decided hey, let's create a hashtag so that we could follow these conversations, so that we could kind of organize them into a thread. And then let's pick a day and time. And what if we instead of us, the moderators, deciding what the question would be, we would do a poll. And so for the last 11 or 12 years, every Sunday, we put out a poll of 3 questions that allows our community of Ed Chatters to select what they want to talk about. And then every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, or at Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we have a conversation. And we've done everything and run the gamut of any and all topics in education you can think of. The validity of homework, the access to research, classroom management, transformational use of technology. We've covered the gamut of what can be talked about. And what we started to see over the years is that a lot of these conversations have adapted, but we're also seeing some of the same things that we saw all those years ago are still things that people want to talk about. And we'll regularly attract 600, 700, 800 people who are tweeting and a day. And now that hashtag has been recognized by Twitter as the official education hashtag. It's used by more people who identify themselves as educators than any other hashtag on Twitter. And it's gone beyond the chat. And a lot of chats came out of EdChat. So a lot of folks in their local area, maybe it was a state, maybe it was a school district, maybe it was a content area or a specific topic. They all took our model of having a particular day and time and a hashtag to follow as a guide to create what is now a huge community of educators who are using Twitter to connect and grow and learn from each other. And many of them can come back and trace their heritage straight back to EdChat. And so, that has played a huge role, not only in my growth as an educator, but a lot of educators can say that, they might not have understood what the point of was Twitter when they started, but they found that community of other educators to learn and grow from. And that has had a tremendous impact on their professional career.
Well, first, thank you for doing that, because I can say that Twitter has been phenomenal for me. And as I do workshops with teachers and teach pre-service teachers, I try to spread that same mantra. And so I'm going to go a little off script of what I would normally ask in this podcast. I wonder if you might help me. How do I help pre-service teachers who think Twitter is just kind of a cesspool of narcissism? What is the way that we can really hook them? I've tried doing like in class, like let's emulate a Twitter chat together, or as an option for an out of class assignment, participate in a chat and reflect on it. do you have any other advice for helping, especially young educators who you would think would be social media, I hesitate to use the word savvy, but at least open to social media? They don't like Twitter, is what I'm finding. And you know, and I know that there's great value in it. So do you have a common way that you might approach someone who's a little bit skeptical about hopping onto Twitter?
Yeah, and I've talked to folks in higher ed about this same exact problem, in that you have young teachers who are learning their craft, and we know that the veterans who have been in it long enough know that Twitter is can be a great way to connect. It's not the only way to connect. There are Facebook communities. There are lots of different ways to do it, but Twitter can be a very easy asynchronous way to connect and plug into a lot of information. But there's a great hesitation because of just as you said, of the perhaps the negatives that come with that. And so what I've seen and in the conversations I've had with professors who work with pre-service teachers, it seems like every August and September and every January and February, I'll get 30 or 40 new followers from one location, and they're all these pre-service teachers, and the professors have suggested, here are some people to follow for these particular things. So some professors will suggest to follow me for the resources that I post, or they might suggest to follow my friend Shaylin Farnsworth because she's really deep into literacy, or my friend Kyle Pace because he does Google, and he's a technology director, or my friend Nick Provenzano, who is a former English teacher but now who incorporates makerspace and robotics and coding into his English class. And so it's helpful to have a lot of those varied people. And that's when I worked with even my own teachers in my own district, there was that hesitation. And it's finding that niche, it's finding that place of those community of people where, hey, they're sharing something that's really valuable to me, that I may not have to participate. And I wrote a blog post a while back about the power of the lurker, and that the goal is to convert someone on social media from being a lurker to a contributor. But there's a lot of power in the lurker, because those who are lurking are learning. They're following people. They're gathering resources. It's starting to maybe pique their curiosity. They may be asking questions of themselves, or they may be saying to themselves, I thought differently about this one particular topic than what these people are saying. What does that do to my own internal thinking? So there's a lot of power in lurking. It's when we start to step into the contribution where we start to see a lot of hesitation, and that takes a lot of time to get folks into a groove to feel that they even have something to contribute. And so I like to say, follow people who you can learn and grow from, that you don't necessarily feel like you have to contribute to the conversation. Obviously, down the road, we want you to contribute because you, as an educator and as a learner, have something to contribute. But certainly lurk and find those people. And I've seen some success with in-class chats, and I've seen some success with just people, with professors and higher ed, who say, hey, here's several people for you to follow. Let's, in 2 weeks, come back and let's just share some of the things you've learned. And then maybe in a couple more weeks, hey, put something out on a particular hashtag ed chat, or a content specific chat, or an idea specific hashtag. And what were you able to find there, or what did you see there? Or following a particular hashtag can be beneficial, but that there can be a lot of that pressure to contribute. And I like to start with, just see what's out there, see what people are saying, and then let's come back face to face and talk about it. And what did you learn, and where do you think you want to go from here? Do you just want to continue to be a lurker, or are there ways that you can contribute to the conversation?
I definitely appreciate that idea of being recursive and iterative, and helping them circle back on it, because I know I introduced it a while ago. It's probably 3-4 weeks ago, so it's probably a good time to come back to it soon. And especially as I try to build my course around the ISTE standards, and thinking about, okay, well, now you became a learner. Now let's think about how you can become a collaborator. Now let's think about how you can become a facilitator. So that's good advice. And also, I do appreciate what you said. Even if you're lurking, you're learning, and there are opportunities out there. And trying to introduce them to other, communities as well through like ISTE forums or through Participate and other platforms like that. So that's good. It's good to hear. So as you think then about educational technology, and maybe it's educational technologies that are specific to the teaching of writing, but maybe it's just educational technology more broadly, you probably get dozens of messages a day and new product demos, and you see things come across your radar screen. What are some ways that you evaluate an educational technology? What are the ways that you make decisions about what is good and useful for learning? And how might you recommend other educators evaluate educational technologies that they come in contact with?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I see and get emails all the time from folks saying, "Hey, I've got this new product. Will you check it out?" Or go to a conference and get stopped on the floor to check something out. And I was in the conference I was just at. I mentioned this stat about the U.S. ed tech industry is an $8 billion a year industry. There's a lot of money in ed tech. So
Wow.
there's a lot of new products that are coming in all of the time because there are people who want to take advantage of that, which means that for just the regular classroom teacher, or even if they're not even if they're a decision maker, like a superintendent or a curriculum director or someone like that, there can be so much to wade through. And so I like to think of a couple things. One, I like to think of the value to learning. So if a product's going to be presented to me, what value does it bring to enhance student understanding? Is it merely just a replacement of something that teachers are doing? Or does it really allow students to do something that they couldn't do before? Is it what I like to call truly transformational? Because I teach administrators when they do a walkthrough, when they're looking at technology, think in your mind, if you took the technology away from that lesson, would that lesson still be possible without it? If it is, in the same way, then that technology probably doesn't need to be used in that lesson. But if you take that technology away and it makes that learning not nearly impossible, but very, very difficult without the technology, then you might be looking at something transformational. So like in writing, if you've got a tool that really allows for a student to broaden and really find who they are as a writer, can really make a difference. Or is it just something that's replicating something that's already out there? The other things I like to look at is, is there research behind any of this? Did whoever created these products, did they actually consult research to find out, what instructional methods are being used through the product to understand, is what they're proposing, is it backed by research? Does it show that instructional methodology has a high probability of growing students? I like to look at privacy and data privacy. So how do those products protect student information? How do those products protect the privacy of their users? What data are they gathering? What data do they need to run? A lot of schools will buy products and put them in all their schools, and the vendor will say, well, hey, we need full access to your entire student information system. But when you really get down to it, all they really need to know is the student name and their grade and their teacher. So, while the vendor might say one thing, understanding what's really required in terms of data privacy and data gathering is really important. But then, there depending on the product, there could be other factors as well. But the point that I try to get across to people is, there's a lot of schools and districts already have a lot of products. There are on average nearly 50 products that are used just in ed tech in a district every day. That's a lot, so there might be things that are already being used that we're just, if we purchase something else, are just replicating work or aren't really making our lives easier or isn't making the life of the teacher easier. But ultimately it comes down to, what is the student going to be able to do that they couldn't do before? What is it going to allow them to do something that's transformational? So again, like in terms of writing, like I want to see the ability for students to be able to share that writing publicly with the world. So is there a way for them to post to a blog? Is there a way for them to post to a website very easily? Because, like when I was in school, the writing that I did lived between myself and the teacher. Now, granted, at that time, I was a terrible writer. I still today think I could be a whole lot better as a writer. But there's some of the things that I go into classrooms and I see students creating need to be shared with the world, or could be shared with the world, and they could have that wider audience. And when the students know that they're writing for a wider audience or they're creating for a wider audience, they inherently try harder and do better because they want to put their best foot forward, like anything that we do when we're doing something that might be considered a performance. So, I'm looking for a lot of different things. And granted, I go out and I see new technologies all the time, and some of it have no place near a classroom. It's very, very rarely that there are things out there that are really going to truly transform either the way that students learn or the teachers teach. And those are the real gems when you come across them.
Right. And to follow up on that, I think I have a question in here. I'll try to get to it, but you mentioned this idea of a transformational use, which I think echoes some of the other frameworks that teachers might be familiar with, like SAMR or the Triple E. And I'm wondering, do you feel that is that an institutional, structural problem of schooling that is preventing us from seeing transformational possibilities for technology? Is that a failure of imagination in a discipline? I hesitate to put that burden on any individual teacher's shoulders, but it could be an individual teacher. I mean, where do you look to try to pivot and make that transformation? How do you do that work?
Yeah, I am a big fan of the TPACK framework. So TPACK there are 3 domains of knowledge that teachers have. They have technology knowledge, content knowledge, and pedagogical knowledge. And when technology is introduced into the classroom, those domains of knowledge get skewed, and teachers tend to forget about pedagogy. And so I place a lot of emphasis on research-backed instructional methodology and pedagogy, and how technology can support pedagogy. And what we see with a lot of professional development is the other way around. I see it at conferences, I see it in schools, I see it everywhere. Come to this session and learn about this technology, and then at the very end, here are 3 ways you can use it in your classroom. Rather, let's have a conversation about what 21st century pedagogy needs to look like, and then how can the tools of technology support that? So for example, the research tells us formative assessment can play a huge, tremendous role in student growth. There are a lot of ed tech tools out there that do formative assessment. So what's immediately thought in a lot of people's minds is that, hey, I'm going to use this tool for what I'm going to call formative assessment, and my kids are going to do better. The problem is teachers don't understand that formative assessment is not a 1-time or 2-time thing. It's an ongoing process, and there are a lot of different components related to it, like looking at data and trends over time. Well, how many teachers use an ed tech product to do formative assessment that they then go back and look at the data over time? To me, that's pedagogy, the understanding fully what an instructional methodology is, and then knowing how can technology support that. Technology can't be the driver. And so in terms of who's at fault, I think, like you said, I don't think there's one person. I don't think it's a teacher's problem. I don't think it's a professional development problem. I think it's a systemic problem that we have just because of this rush to put technology in the classroom. And rightly so, there should be the use of technology in learning. Certainly it enhances what students are able to do, but we have to take a step back and have to say, what is the impact on pedagogy going to be if I give every student a laptop? Very few districts did that when they instituted one-to-one. And the research tells us that one-to-one programs don't really enhance student understanding. It's the instructional methods that are used in conjunction with one-to-one that show student growth. So we have to take a step back. Everybody, technology directors, superintendents, higher ed, people like me, we have to always take a step back and say, when we're talking about technology, what are the pedagogical implications of what we're doing, and how are we enhancing pedagogy, and how are we ensuring that what we're doing is going to do and take us and everything that we can to help students grow. Not, hey, I've got this Chromebook I need to use today. What can I do with it?
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. Again, connecting to the ISTE standards and this idea that, students need to co-learn. One of the tasks I've assigned to my pre-service teachers for the next couple of weeks is that they need to go onto Common Sense Media or ISTE's EdTech Advisor and pick a tool that they don't know anything about but they have to work on it together with a partner. Like they literally need to be sitting shoulder to shoulder in the same room, not even a virtual room this time. Like I want you sitting next to each other and talking about it and play with it for half an hour. And then at the end of half an hour, record a screencast together. And they're like, well, why do we have to do that? And I think it's exactly what you were just saying. It's that, I want you to be not just enamored with the shiny tool, but to actually have a conversation about what it means for teaching and learning. And we'll see how that goes. But I hope that maybe I'm trying to emulate some of the teacher education pedagogical practices that you're getting at there. So I'm going to pivot here slightly and ask you a bit about your writing. You mentioned a little bit about the role that writing plays for you, and you've mentioned one of your co-authors, Tom Whitby. You have a few books that are out there, so maybe you could tell us about some of your work, maybe the work that you're in the process of writing as we speak, and then we'll hear a little bit more about the way that writing fits into your professional life. So tell us about your books and about yourself as a writer.
Yeah, when I started my journey in education, I never thought that I would become an author. I never thought it was in the realm of possibility for me. And I've tried to read everything I can from well-known education authors, and never really saw myself doing that. And then I had this opportunity to publish my first book with Tom called The Relevant Educator, from an idea that we had and from a presentation that he and I had done. And that really kind of lit a spark in me to write. And then I was able to publish my next one, which is called The Tech Savvy Administrator, and then another one called Content Curation. And I'm currently writing another one that's not titled. That's a bit more longer form. So the first ones were kind of short forms, and that several years ago, short forms were popular. They're easily consumable, and teachers really like them. But I found that I have brevity is not my specialty at all, which drives my editors crazy. But I like to write in a very conversational style. Like I'm sitting next to the person reading the book, and we're just having a conversation. And so I'm writing a book right now about that transformational use of technology. But writing has played a tremendous role in who I am as an educator. Reflection is a big part of what I do every single day. Whenever I'm presenting, or I'm working, or do whatever I'm doing, I'm constantly thinking about how can I improve, what can I do better. And a lot of that stems from the writing that I do, and taking time to write every day, whether it's on my book or just my reflective journal, and just having that conversation, that internal conversation with myself, has really helped me hone who I am as a writer. I still have a long way to go. For me, it's a constant process of trying to find the right voice for what I'm trying to say. But I tell people, they ask me all the time, how do I get a book published? Well, you just write. You write what you love, and you write about what you're passionate about, and naturally that passion comes through in what you write and what people read. So for me, I try to write every single day, and it's definitely made me a more reflective educator. Still yet to be seen whether it's made me a better educator. I'm still working on that every single day, but certainly writing is a cornerstone of who I am as an educator.
Well, I would have to say that with 160K followers on Twitter, people probably think you're saying some pretty important things with your writing. So that's pretty impressive. And yeah, I can certainly appreciate as a writer too. You have to put your fingers on the keyboard every day, and it has to be more than just an email, right? It's got to be something that's going to help fuel your fire and help you reflect and think forward and all those types of things. So certainly can appreciate too your point that the short form is helpful, whether that is a tweet or a blog post or a 50 to 100 page book, but having that opportunity to fully express your ideas and make a broader argument about your vision in a longer form book makes good sense as well. So as you think about your role and where you're at and what you aim to do, what's on the horizon? What is it that you're looking forward to doing as an educator, with other educators, for other educators? What do the next few months or year hold for you?
Yeah, so I've got some interesting things coming up for me. I'm getting ready to travel to the Middle East to go to Qatar and to a conference there called the World Innovation Summit on Education. And I've been going to this conference for a number of years, and specifically talking about and learning about girls' education around the world. And I have 2 daughters, and it's quickly becoming a passion area for me to help figure out what I can do as an educator, help others really drive education specifically for girls in other parts of the world. And so that's definitely a passion project of mine. So I'm really looking forward to going there and to having those conversations. And I've still got several conferences coming up, and I'm looking forward to doing some learning of my own. I always try to seek out opportunities. I was able to do a week-long workshop with John Hattie earlier this year, which was really beneficial for me as a learner. So not only am I going out and working with schools and districts, which I'm doing every day, and going to conferences and presenting, I'm also trying to maintain myself as a learner so that I know what's happening, so that I know what directions I need to be going in. So, hopefully within a year from now that my newest book is published, and I'll have lots of opportunities to talk about that. But I try to think about, how can I continue to learn and push myself as a learner, so that in the information that I present and that I talk to educators about it makes sense to them, and it's not coming from it's not too abstract for them. So I'm continuously growing as that learner, and doing that every single day.
I can certainly appreciate and understand that, and congratulations on your efforts and your ability to travel and bring the voice that we need to support young women in education around the world. I certainly appreciate that. And speaking of learning, I think I might have to correct a mistake that I made at the top of the show, where I said Web 2.0, and then I heard you say Web 20. Anything you'd want to help me or our listeners understand about that?
It's my website. My blog was originally called the Web 2.0 Connected Classroom, and on Twitter, there's no symbols in Twitter names, so I was just Web 20, and so either one is fine. It's Web 20 or Web 2.0, either one.
Oh, okay. Here I thought coming up to 2020, there was something else I might need to know, or something about
I might need to think about that. That's a great idea.
Where are we in Web 3.0 now? 4.0?
Right.
Who knows where we're at? So, well, Stephen, I really appreciate the time, and appreciate the work that you do with and for educators and on behalf of students. And it's been a real pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Writing Matters with Dr. Troy Hicks is a Writable podcast. Discover more episodes and subscribe on your favorite streaming platforms, or check out filmed episodes on YouTube. And if you want to learn how to grow great writers, check out Writable.com.